Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajya Sabha Television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events to have happened around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. North Korea, undeterred by the fresh UN sanctions, fires second ballistic missile over Japan's territory. United States calls it a reckless act, urges Russia and China to do more to rein in the north. India and Japan signed 15 agreements to enhance bilateral cooperation. Both countries pitch for zero tolerance towards terrorism, agreed to strengthen fight against Al-Qaeda, Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Toiba. Belarusian president visits India, New Delhi, and Minsk signed 10 pacts in areas ranging from science and technology to manufacturing. Also agreed to increase cooperation at international fora. And 25 people killed in a fire at a boarding school in Malaysia. Short circuit suspected to have started the blaze at the unauthorized religious school. Authorities, however, have not ruled out foul play. Well, a day after threatening to sink Japan into the sea, a defiant North Korea fired another ballistic missile across Japan on Friday. It was the second aggressive test flight over Japan's territory, further aggravating tensions in the region.
Millions of Japanese woke up to the sound of blaring sirens and emergency phone alerts on Friday as neighboring North Korea blasted its second missile over the country in less than a month. Residents were warned to take shelter while the intermediate ballistic missile passed over Hokkaido before landing in the northern Pacific Ocean.
It just doesn't feel real. I really don't know what it will do.
It gives me shivers. I feel like telling them to just stop it now.
It's the second time now, so I was surprised, but thought it will just pass us by up in the sky.
What do you do in a circumstance like that? You're in a little city in Hokkaido.
Japan said it would never tolerate such dangerous, provocative action. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called for the UN sanctions on North Korea to be imposed firmly.
North Korea has trampled over the strong will of United Nations community to a peaceful solution as seen in the United Nations resolutions the other day. We absolutely cannot accept these provocations. I call for an emergency UN Security Council meeting. The international community needs to come together and send a clear message to North Korea that it is threatening world peace with its actions. Now is the time for the international community to come together. The latest sanctions need to be imposed in full. North Korea needs to be made to understand that if it continues on this path, there is no bright future for it. The Japanese government has been completely monitoring the missile trajectory since its launch and has taken all the security measures needed. We will continue to ensure the people's safety and security under a strong US-Japanese alliance.
South Korea responded within minutes by firing 2 ballistic missiles into the sea in a simulated strike on the north. President Moon Jae-in also called a National Security Council meeting to discuss the launch.
North Korea should clearly realize that it is entering a path of downfall due to a diplomatic and economic isolation as much as it increases frequency and strength of reckless provocation.
The United States termed the missile launch a reckless act. It also called on Russia and China to do more to rein in North Korea. China, however, continued to urge for peaceful and diplomatic means to ease the tensions on the Korean peninsula.
We have seen that peacefully solving the nuclear issue on the peninsula through formal diplomatic means is slowly becoming the consensus of the international community. At the same time, there are more and more people who have realized that sanctions are not the way to solve the problem. The most pressing task is that all sides in question immediately stop threatening and provoking comments that create more tensions on the peninsula.
Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull also condemned the missile launch. He too called for tougher punishments against Pyongyang.
This is another example of why it's vitally important to continue to tighten those economic sanctions on North Korea. And I think this latest missile launch over Japan and the violent outbursts of North Korean propaganda threatening Japan and the United States overnight, this shows that the sanctions are working. Because what has happened is that despite a lot of critics who said it wouldn't happen, the United Nations Security Council has tightened up the sanctions. Oil imports into North Korea are being restricted substantially. 90% of their disclosed exports are being prohibited. So the economic screws are tightening on North Korea.
Friday's missile launch is being termed as the longest ever flight of an intermediate-range missile by North Korea till now. According to South Korean authorities, the missile travelled around 3,700 kilometres, reaching a maximum height of 770 kilometres. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about what's happening in the region is Harshvi Pant, Distinguished Fellow and Head of ORF Strategic Studies. Thank you for joining me on the program. You know, as far as the threats are concerned, it's a new week, a fresh threat from North Korea, and also the UN sanctions don't seem to be working as far as North Korea is concerned. Are they even concerned about all that's happening around them?
Well, I think what seems to be happening is that they are playing off China and the US, and I think when you have the great powers not on the same page, then I think you do give an incentive to the outliers to perform the way they are. You know, the bellicose rhetoric, the continuing missile and nuclear tests. They are a sign that perhaps they have read the tea leaves, and they are saying that the world community is not together. And you can see that the reactions that you just played. The Chinese are singing in a different voice compared to what the Americans and other regional players are saying.
But how serious is a threat from North Korea? Should South Korea and Japan really be concerned? Because the North has said that they're going to flatten Japan in the coming days.
Yes, I think they perhaps want a lot of attention. They want a lot of attention from the US in particular. And they are threatening. I think if you have been seeing this rhetoric, it has been ratcheting up over the last few days. So I think there is a sense that perhaps after the economic sanctions, what else the United States might do. There is also concern. There might be concern in Pyongyang about the military posture that the Trump administration is continuously suggesting. So I think there is a concern that unless you come to the negotiating table, and they want America to come to the negotiating table, unless you do that, perhaps they would continue to ratchet up the pressure in terms of the bellicose rhetoric that they have.
But how can you negotiate with a man like Kim Jong-un? I mean, everyone calls him a madman, except people except the Chinese and the Russians to some extent. Is he a reasonable man? Can he be reasoned with?
We don't know yet, because I think we have tried, especially the Americans have tried to negotiate with the North Koreans. Many in America feel that those negotiations in 1990s and in 2000s were not very successful. But I think what they did was that it froze the program, at least for the duration. So what we have seen in the last few years, when no negotiations have been happening, they have been very successful in continuing with their nuclear and missile program. So perhaps I think some amount of negotiation is the only way, because I think you have the leaderships of various countries articulating the need for greater sanctions, but we have not seen economic sanctions being very effective against a determined country that wants to pursue nuclear weapons.
Sure.
We have had the case of Iran in the past, and now North Korea. And so I think the viability of economic sanctions remains very doubtful. In that case, some degree of negotiations might be the only way. They may not be very rational from our perspective, but I don't think the regime might be suicidal in that sense.
You know, Vladimir Putin has been calling for these negotiations. He says that the sanctions and forcing North Korea is not the way forward, really. We need to sit on the table and talk. Do you believe that Russia and China will play a bigger role in trying and, dissolving the situation there?
It's very unlikely, given that Chinese have a very different approach to this problem. They don't want the regime to collapse. For fear of the refugees, for fear of the fact that tomorrow there might be unification of the Korean Peninsula. So I think they don't want that. And if they don't want that, and the Americans also don't want to incentivize this behavior by sitting side by side with the North Koreans. So I think there is a problem there as to how do you structure these negotiations in such a manner that you are not incentivizing bad behavior, but at the same time you are also negotiating some kind of disarmament, some kind of arms control with the North Koreans.
But what role do you see Vladimir Putin and the Russians playing in the days to come?
I think given their very close relationship, increasingly close relationship with the Chinese now, I think there might be a sense where they can pressurize the Chinese to do a bit more. Because Chinese have not done enough. It's very clear if they had wanted, they could have really tightened the screws around the Koreans. It doesn't seem to have worked. So I think there Russians certainly have a role to play, and the Japanese would be expecting them to play a role, because Japan and Russia are also engaging on a range of economic and energy-related issues.
All right, we'll have to leave to that. Pant, thank you so much for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Moving on now, of course, India and Japan on Thursday signed 15 agreements to boost bilateral ties and take strategic understanding to new heights. New understanding was also reached between the two countries to counter unilateral activities in the Indo-Pacific region. Wary of the renewed ties between the two countries, China is feeling the heat and was critical of Abe's visit. Here's more.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reviewed bilateral relations at a summit meeting on Thursday. They also witnessed the signing of 15 agreements that are expected to impart a new direction to India's development strategy. The agreements included a specific Act East forum to increase infrastructure outreach inside northeastern areas. Other agreements concern development and investment promotion in various areas, including sports.
आमूलचूल परिवर्तन की राह पर चल रहा है. ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस हो या स्किल इंडिया, टैक्सेशन रिफॉर्म या मेक इन इंडिया, भारत पूरी तरह ट्रांसफॉर्म हो रहा है. जापान के बिजनेसेस के लिए ये बहुत बड़ा मौका है और मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि जापान की कई कंपनियां हमारे राष्ट्रीय फ्लैगशिप कार्यक्रमों से गहन तौर पर जुड़ी है.
Over the last 1 year, Japanese investment in India has grown 80%, touching $4.7 billion. Both the countries also chalked out a roadmap to ensure a continuous flow of investments in government as well as private sectors.
Japan and India will further merge policies for a free and open Indo-Pacific region with PM's Act East policies. We have agreed to work together on a project to heighten the region's cooperativeness in Asia, Africa and Middle East.
Both leaders also spoke against cross-border terrorism and bullying tactics of China in the South China Sea. They also pointed out that the joint Malabar exercises were a joint front against aggressive Chinese activity. Both the countries also agreed to explore cooperation between Army, Ground Defence Force, as well as between the Air Force and Japan's Air Defence Force. Modi and Abe later took part in business meeting aimed at letting the political understanding percolate down to trade as well. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come. UN appeals for massive help for Rohingyas fleeing Myanmar. India sends relief material for refugees who have reached Bangladesh. That and much more on the other side. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Kibutu in Arunachal Pradesh, East Point East on the map of India. Kibutu is dangerously close to the Chinese pressure point. We see first-hand and unseen areas of sand dunes and see how BSF is guarding this difficult territory along the Indo-Pak borderline. We are now slowly entering into the interior-most parts of the Sir Creek area. Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force justifies each word of this saying. Watch super exclusive episodes of National Security Series only on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. Well, with a view to give a boost to expand influence in the Eurasian region, India signed 10 agreements with Belarus, ranging from cooperation in science and technology to manufacturing. Both countries want to move towards India-Eurasian economic cooperation, and Belarus is interested in a free trade agreement with India via the Eurasian Economic Union. Here's a detailed report.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko was on a two-day visit to India. On Tuesday, he engaged with Prime Minister Narendra Modi for a summit-level meeting in New Delhi. After the meeting, 10 agreements were signed between the two countries. Belarus offered India its services in connecting with both Eurasian and European Union. The agreements included cooperation in youth and sports, skill development, science and technology, oil and gas, building construction, potash production, as well as in oil engines, among others. Both countries decided to collaborate in other areas, including pharma industries and heavy industries.
We reviewed the architecture of our partnership. We considered ideas and initiatives for further expanding it. We decided to enhance our interaction in all aspects of our cooperation. Found in President Lukashenko matching enthusiasm and desire to scale up our partnership for the benefit of our people.
I propose construction of an international scientific park to support Indian production in our country and sell Indian goods at Eurasian and EU markets.
The Belarusian president visited India on 25 years of diplomatic relations between both countries. A commemorative stamp was also released on this occasion. Defense manufacturing is an area of cooperation between the two countries, and New Delhi sought joint manufacturing in India as part of the Make in India program. Belarus, while agreeing on the proposal, also invited India to join as a free trade partner with the Eurasian zone.
We will also encourage joint development and manufacturing in defense sector under the Make in India program. Last year, Indian companies made a positive beginning with 3 joint ventures in pharmaceuticals. Possibility for partnership also exists in manufacturing of tires, agro-industrial machinery and mining equipment.
We are ready to provide to Indian companies the most favorable business conditions in the country. I can promise my support of finalizing the free trade agreement between India and Belarus.
Earlier on Tuesday, Lukashenko was accorded a ceremonial welcome at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. He then met President Ramnath Kovind and Vice President Venkaiah Naidu, who apprised him of great trade opportunities in India and also the scope of people-to-people relations. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, 23 students were killed in Kuala Lumpur after a massive fire broke out at an Islamic boarding school on Thursday. The students, along with 2 wardens, were trapped in their dormitory when the fire broke out early in the morning. While authorities have launched an investigation to ascertain the cause of the fire, questions are being raised once again on the legal functioning of Islamic schools in Malaysia.
In one of Malaysia's worst fire tragedies in 2 decades, 24 people, including 22 boys aged between 13 and 17 years, were charged to death in a school in Kuala Lumpur. The fire broke out in one of the dormitories of the Darul Quran Ittifaqiyah's Islamic boarding school early on Thursday morning. The students were reportedly trapped inside the dormitory as they were unable to leave through the only door which caught fire. Many of the bodies of the victims were found piled on top of one another, indicating a stampede. While 2 wardens also perished in the fire, 6 students are reported to be in a critical condition. 11 people were rescued.
In the morning, I heard the victim screaming, but there was nothing I could do. The fire was spreading very fast.
We dismantled the window grill, opened the window and climbed down on a water pipe.
While the cause of the fire is not confirmed yet, officials suspect the blaze was caused by an electrical short circuit or a mosquito-repelling device. Officials said the religious school was operating without a license or a fire safety permit.
Fire safety authorities had come up with training so that the Hafiz have a volunteer firefighting group. Some schools feel we are trying to take over their administration, but we are only looking after the safety aspect.
The latest incident has once again raised serious questions on the religious schools in Malaysia, also known as Tahfiz. Over 200 fire incidents have been recorded in the religious Islamic schools in Malaysia since 2015, which are often unregistered and run illegally. Tahfiz teach Quran to students between the ages of 5 and 18 and are not sanctioned by the government. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Moving on, now Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi's government in Myanmar is facing worldwide condemnation for violence against the Rohingya Muslims. Both US and UK have said that they support her government, but she must end the violence immediately. Amnesty International claims that the military was setting fire to Rohingya majority villages in Rakhine state. Meanwhile, in India, the centre has told the Supreme Court that the Rohingya refugees are a security threat and therefore India can't open doors to them. Here's more.
Burnt villages with huge pillars of smoke rising from them. This is the status in Rakhine State in Myanmar, claims Amnesty International, adding that it has detected up to 80 large fires since 25th of August, calling it a move to drive the Rohingyas away. The refugees too share similar stories of persecution, even as Myanmar government calls it an action against terrorists, denying reports that the fires were set by the security forces. Myanmar's military kill our people. They chop men to die. But we don't want to stay here. We want to go back to our country where there is peace. We want to live in Burma. We don't want anything else. We just want to go our land. This time, we were bound to come here in Bangladesh.
The US, however, said that Myanmar is facing a defining moment and it must stop the violence against the minority Rohingya community. US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that Myanmar's action in dealing with the Rohingya crisis would define its political direction.
This violence must stop. This persecution must stop. It's been characterized by many as ethnic cleansing. That must stop. And we need to support Aung San Suu Kyi and her leadership, but also be very clear and unequivocal to the military power sharing in that government that this is unacceptable. And this is going to, in many ways, I think, define the direction that Burma will take. They need our strong support. We should give them our strong support.
Expressing his support for Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said that her government must end the violence against the Rohingyas.
But it is vital for her now to make clear that this is an abomination and that those people will be allowed back. That those people will be allowed back to Burma, and that preparation is being made, and that the abuse of their human rights and that the killings, hundreds, perhaps even thousands, that the killings will stop.
A day after terming the violence against the Rohingyas as ethnic cleansing, the United Nations has appealed for massive help for those who have fled to Bangladesh. UN fears that the numbers could keep rising unless the violence stops.
We're talking about 20 to 25,000 people per day fleeing from their lives, crossing the border into Bangladesh. We're scaling up from 35,000 people to now 400,000 people, and we're talking about even more. So we're on the ground getting it done.
Meanwhile, India on Thursday sent 53 tons of relief materials to Bangladesh for the fleeing refugees. The first consignment of India's assistance comes days after Dhaka briefed New Delhi about the problems faced by it due to the influx of these refugees. India has, however, refused to open its doors to the Rohingya refugees, Responding to the Supreme Court's questions on a PIL on deportation of Rohingya refugees, Centre told the Supreme Court that the Rohingyas are a threat to the national security and hence cannot stay in India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, let's now shift to focus and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed this week in sports action. Cristiano Ronaldo scored twice as Real Madrid began the defence of the Champions League by easing past Cypriot side Apoel Nicosia. Forward Ronaldo opened the scoring by slotting home from close range and added a penalty in the second half. Defender Sergio Ramos scored the third with an acrobatic overhead kick from close range. Zinedine Zidane's side top Group H on goal difference ahead of Tottenham, who defeated Borussia Dortmund 3-1. Two fine goals helped Barcelona to a comfortable 3-0 win over last season's Champions League finalists Juventus at the Nou Camp. Messi struck right on half-time, drilling his shot in off the post after a brilliant 1-2 with Luis Suarez. Ivan Rakitic scored Barca's second after Messi's shot was cleared off the line. The Argentine then wrapped up victory with a superb left-footed goal from 20 yards. 17 national anti-doping organizations have demanded Russia is banned from the 2018 Winter Olympics. Less than 5 months before the start of the Pyeongchang Games, the group said the International Olympic Committee's refusal to hold Russia accountable for one of the biggest scandals in sports history imperils clean athletes and the future of the Olympic movement. The NADOS, which includes the UK and US anti-doping agencies, warned they had serious doubts that Pyeongchang 2018, which takes place from 9 to 25th February, would be clean. Chris Froome has cemented his place among the greats of cycling by becoming the first British winner of the Volta a España in Madrid last Sunday. The Team Sky Riders' winning margin was 2 minutes and 15 seconds over Italy's Vincenzo Nibali. Russia's Ilnur Zakarin was 36 seconds further back in third. Froome is the third man to complete the Tour de France Vuelta double in the same year and first in that order. Italy's Matteo Trentin won the final stage to claim his fourth of the race. And finally, NASA scientists on Wednesday briefed reporters on the last days of the Cassini spacecraft that ended its 13-year mission to Saturn on Friday, transmitting data until the final moment before it plunged into the ringed planet's atmosphere. Cassini, the first spacecraft to orbit Saturn, made the last of 22 farewell dives between the planet's rings and surface on September 15th. I'm going to leave you this week with images of Saturn taken by NASA's Cassini spacecraft. Until next time, this is Frank Pereira signing off.